Did you know nearly 1 in 5 small businesses don't make it past their first year? That includes chiropractic offices. But for Dr. Abigail Riutta, her dream became a reality.
I was lucky that first day I had 4 new patients. Like I had people waiting to come and see me.
On this episode of Chiropractical, we're breaking down what every new grad needs to know before they open their doors. This is Chiropractical. If you're one of those people that just thinks, I'll figure it out later, maybe after graduation, this episode is going to change the way you approach the rest of your time in school. The truth is, the transition from a student to a chiropractor doesn't come with a roadmap, and that uncertainty can be overwhelming. If you're a chiropractic student wondering what life is really like after graduation, beyond those exams, the adjustments, and the white coat ceremony, this episode is for you. Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Abigail Riutta, a former NCMIC Student Ambassador and now new chiropractor in Northern New York. She recently took one of the biggest steps in her professional life. She opened her own practice. Dr. Abigail Riutta, thanks for joining us here on Chiropractical.
Thanks for having me.
Other students out there right now, what can they be doing? And let's maybe focus more on like people in their clinical phase, right? So you're getting close. What can they be doing to set themselves up for success if their plan is to open their own practice? What's kind of a checklist, maybe 3 to 5 things or more if you feel like that's appropriate, that you would give them to say, hey, this is going to get you moving in the right direction?
First off is figuring out where and how you want to practice, how you visualize yourself as a practitioner and how you visualize your space. Once you know that, putting yourself out in your community. So I started practicing in May. In January, I started doing community presentations. So I lucked out. I only lived about 3 hours away from where I went to chiropractic school. So anytime I was home, I was trying to do something in the community, whether it was coaching, whether it was giving presentations on this is why you get headaches or how chiropractic care can help, stuff like that. That way people knew I was coming. So getting your name out there, getting policies and procedures in place. So these are all stuff that you can plan ahead of time as long as you know kind of where you're going. So if you're opening your own practice, okay, what hours are you going to be open? What's your website going to look like? I used Google Sites because it's free. If you're trying to start up on a budget, made my own website, made my own business cards, started creating my templates for notes, had people review them, my classmates review them, say, this is, Abby, you forgot this. You need to add a review of systems on here. You need to add this. You don't really need this. Like all that sort of stuff, bouncing ideas. If there's a technique you want to do, like I knew I wanted my Webster certification heading into practice, so I got that leading up to graduation.
What about the business side? What can you do early on the business side? Understanding some states like New York, right? You've got a process you've got to go through, but what kind of business advice or that's not fair. What kind of business insight, let's say, would you give to somebody who's looking at starting their own practice?
I would create like a policies and procedures manual. So I took Dr. Lisa Goodman's book, the manual. She released that like right as I was making this decision that this is what I wanted to do. So I took that book and I took a notebook and I was highlighting and basically creating my own manual using her book of like, okay, step by step, this is what I'm going to do. She has some like self-reflection things in there too. Like, so I would do that. And like I said, you are limited. Like I couldn't even open my own business bank account until I had my tax ID number, which I had to wait for my PLLC, which I had to wait for my license. So it was at least knowing and like creating that checklist of, okay, the day I get my PLLC, we're doing this, 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 and this. The day I get my tax ID number, we're doing this, 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 and this. So kind of creating those checklists based off.
One thing, going back a little bit, you did mention getting involved in your community. I think as a chiropractor, a lot of us have a fear of that, right? Which is interesting when you think about it. Fear of going out and talking to people when we sit in a room all day and talk to people. But I think when we get more than one person in that room or there's that fear of rejection, it's a different space. So what was that like? Any advice or tips and tricks to getting out in the community, talking to both potential patients, but also potential referral sources, whether that's a doctor or a business, whatever it may be?
Yeah, that was definitely something I was scared of. And I knew it was something that you had no choice. Like being in a small town, word of mouth is what was going to build my practice. Yes, social media, posting things online, but word of mouth, like that can make or break you, whether it's a good referral or a bad one. So I knew giving those presentations, talking to people, talking to practitioners was definitely the scariest part once I started opening my practice,
Okay.
because sometimes chiropractors are not respected by the medical community. And I did my internship at the Finger Lakes DA. So we
Okay.
worked right in the hospital setting. So all of a sudden I was in this hospital setting where chiropractors were really well respected to, okay, now we're in the real world where sometimes that isn't the case.
Sure.
So I was lucky when I was in the VA, like they held us at this standard of like, if you're going to call yourself a doctor, you better talk like one, you better write your notes like one, like you're held up here. So that when I started my practice and I started seeing patients, and trust me, the healthcare in our area is very limited because of we're in such a remote area, that sometimes I see things and I'm like, when was the last time you saw your primary? And they're like 6 years ago. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, who is your primary? And then I would give them a call, send them my notes. And that's how I started building it on that aspect, which
Okay.
that's a terrifying thing. And a lot of them were like, thank you for caring. Like, thank you for reaching out about X, Y, and Z. Thank you for the note. Like, I'll review it and get back to you. And then I've started getting patients that way from a lot of the community members. And then a lot of it is fear around chiropractors. They're like, I have a lot of patients who are scared that I'm going to paralyze them or break their neck. A lot of community members. So it's a lot of educating on like, that is not what we're doing. We do a very good exam, history, and I'm never going to do something that you're not comfortable with. I have all these tools in my tool belt. If you don't want me manually adjusting your neck, I will not do that. I'm never going to force you to do a treatment that you are not comfortable with. So trying to set that foundation with anytime I'm out in the community, because we'll be out at my sister's sports games and I'll have someone approach me and be like, hey, I've been having this shoulder pain. Is this a chiropractor thing? Or should I go see a PT? And I'm like, I wanted to watch my sister's game. But yes, I'll probably answer your question during halftime sort of thing. Just trying to be a friendly face and talk as much as you can. You get more comfortable. It's terrifying at first, but the more you do it, the better you get at it.
I think the biggest question I always ask people to start is, why chiropractic? What was your driver that got you into the profession?
So when I was 13, I was in 8th grade. I was playing JV basketball. And there's a big difference between an 8th grade girl and 10th grade girl. So I went up for a layup and I got hit by this girl and immediately my back spasmed up. I was on the ground, like not quite sure what happened. I've never been injured before playing a sport either. So it was like all new. I remember getting carried off. My parents brought me home and my mom had to help me like get in and out of bed, through him, use the shower. And she's like, okay, we got to take you to go get checked out. Like there's something going on. Got x-rays. Nothing was wrong. They sent me to an orthopedic group. They offered me some pain medications, referral to PT. And it was a couple weeks process of just trying to figure out what was going on. Like they were like, nothing's broken. Maybe it's a muscle spasm. And I'm going to PT, doing all these things. And I wasn't getting any better. And for me, like I was 13. Basketball was life. Like that's what I wanted to do. So my dad was like, let's go see a chiropractor. And I said, first of all, I have no idea what that is. Never heard of a chiropractor before, but you're my dad. I trust you. Let's go. So we went, I got adjusted and it was immediate. Like I hopped off the table. I have never felt so great. I was back playing basketball within like a week or two. And yeah, it was incredible. And I was like, ooh, that's what I'm doing for the rest of my life. Like I want to be able to provide that kind of relief for my patients.
Yeah, insanely powerful. That's awesome. Glad to hear it was so immediate for you, because I know, like you said, that is your life. At that time and that age, missing a couple of weeks of basketball would have made me crazy. So right there with you. And did you know right from the start your plan was to hit the ground running, open your own practice, and just go for it? Or did that some kind of develop as you were working your way through school?
So the area I live in northern New York, so right on the Canadian border, very small town. And I didn't know there was an option to be an associate. Like all the chiropractors by me own their own practice, and it's either husband and wife that are both chiropractors owning a practice, or it's an individual doc. And they're all family practices. So that's what in my head, I thought that was the only form of chiropractic care. Like I've shadowed a bunch and that's all I've ever seen. It was until I went to chiropractic school, I realized, oh, you can be an associate. You could work at all these different clinics. You could specialize in pregnancy or sports. Like I had no idea how big the profession was until I was already in school. But I had this mindset of, we live in a small area that's, one, not very educated, and two, is in need of healthcare providers. So I was like, I knew I wanted to move back to my hometown. So opening my own practice was really the only
Was
option
the
I
option?
had. So yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, speaking from my experience, I had no idea how I wanted to
Mhm.
come out and practice. And I think a lot of what we're going to cover today, and I think maybe you're going to be able to give a lot of insight on to people who may be in a position that I was in of I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started. I don't know what the first thing I even need to do is. And when you're in school, it's so overwhelming, all the other stuff in life. The thought of adding a business plan and a business formation and all of that stuff on is can be overwhelming. You didn't have a
For
choice,
sure.
right? You
Yep.
just this is what has to happen. This is what's going to happen. So I think there's a blessing in that to a degree, right? You had that
Yes.
mindset from the start, so you're doing it one way or the other.
Well, I will say halfway through chiropractic school, like all of a sudden I did have the opportunity to go and like join this really big practice. And I
Okay.
love the docs there. I highly considered it. I was like, but it just wasn't in the area I wanted to live. It was in a bigger city. I like the small town life. I like living in a smaller area. And I was like, as much as like that security and like clocking in and clocking out, I kind of liked. I was like, I want to have the control. I want to be in my hometown. And then I did have opportunities to buy practices. And I was like, it's still not my hometown. So I was like, I'm
Sure.
just going to risk it all and open
Yeah.
out on my own, I guess.
Well, let's talk about that. So, how did you kind of start the process? Was this something you're working on from the day you kind of started into chiropractic school? Because again, you didn't really know there was another option, or did you wait until your last year, last trimester, semester, whatever it may have been?
A little bit both. Like I said, this is something I've been thinking about since I was 13 years old. Like planning
Mm,
in my head, always asking questions, kind of picking up things and kind of putting it in the back of my mind.
okay.
So I remember like even coming home for breaks during college, walking through town and trying to figure out like where I'd want my practice location to be. Like there's only like 10 spots I could choose from. So I'm trying to figure out like, is it going to be in a small building kind of off Main Street? Am I going to rent a spot right on Main Street? Am I like trying to figure out that sort of stuff, just planning ahead? Um, and then I want to say it was seventh trimester when I really like started looking. Like I
Okay.
was in that clinical portion. Academic stuff is starting to die down aside from studying for boards. So I really started looking and I found the building that we're in currently online. So it was 2 years before I graduated, year and a half before I graduated. And this building was very, very expensive
Mm,
online. And I was like, it was an old dentist office. And I was like, oh, this would be like my dream, like to have
yeah.
a clinic that has 8 treatment rooms that I could grow into, that I could hire associates. Like it's a nice thought kind of thing.
Yeah.
And as I started progressing through school, like I'd refresh the realtor websites just to see like what was coming on. And I could see the price of this building drop and drop and drop and drop and drop. When it was like 6 months out from graduation, when I was like, okay, I need to make a decision. Like, are we doing this? Am I not? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I saw that this was a steal for a building. I was like, you know what? My dad just retired. And I was like, he was looking to get into real estate. I was like, would you like to make an investment? Someone's
I
a
have this
thing.
amazing building for you.
Yes, I was like, what is this something you would be interested in? Because I graduated chiropractic school at 23. No one was going
Mm,
to sell me a piece of property of real estate. I had no like sort of anything to my name. Like that just wasn't going to happen. So I'm very, very, very fortunate that I have one family that supports me both emotionally and through this whole journey, but financially, they were able to help me out in that sort of
yeah.
standpoint. And I rent from my dad just as I would have if I was in any other building.
I think you have to have that help along the way, right? In some form or fashion. It might not be financial. It might be a great mentor who really sets you
Mhm.
up with the perspective of how to run the practice. But I think everybody, if they really boil it down, you had some of that help somewhere in the process. And it, again, I don't know if you could function without it, taking it on and be successful quickly, I guess I should say. You can definitely
Yes.
figure it out, but getting through it quicker because of that. So that's awesome. So let's step back a little bit. When you were kind of putting things together, your business plan, seventh trimester, really starting to really think about this, what did you find was the easy parts of the process, if there were any, and if not, what were the easier parts of the process, I guess, to get you up and running?
Easy process was Easy process was kind of coming up with my idea of the kind of chiropractor I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to spend time with my patients. So very similar to how we do in school, I do an hour first patient appointment and then 30-minute follow-ups just so I can start to build that rapport with my patients and take my time. Granted, I'm only 8 months into practice, so this could totally change, but I knew starting out this is what I wanted. And I knew the techniques I wanted, so kind of creating that sort of idea in my head. Like, what does the practice look like? What is the patient experience? What do I appreciate as a patient? So, what was my waiting room looking like? What was the check-in process like? What was it like for patients to book appointments online? Like, I wanted to think about all that sort of stuff ahead of time. And then we had a few business classes in chiropractic school, so we worked on like our business cards and all that sort of stuff, which I had all
Yeah.
that ready to go.
So you had that good foundation, right? You knew who you were and who you wanted to be as a practitioner, so you could really kind of put that piece aside and then focus on the business aspect of things, which to my next question, I guess the harder parts, which I'm assuming was that, right? The LLC formation, finding the building, easy, hard, I think, because you identified the space, but there was a lot of work there. So what were some of the bigger challenges or maybe some of the big hurdles you had to get through or get over?
Yeah. Coming out of school, I was very confident in who I was as a practitioner and who I was as a doctor. It was figuring out who I am as a business owner and how to do this. So, luckily, like I said, my dad was a big mentor for me on the business aspect of things. So, he was like, you need to get a good accountant and you need to get a good lawyer. So, I went and like that was the investment I made into the practice, like the big money I spent. So,
Okay.
I hired a lawyer who she was like, I work with a few different practitioners. I recommend a PLLC over an LLC. And like she took all care of that paperwork for me, which was fantastic. And then got all the legal stuff for me because I had no idea. Like I didn't
Yeah,
know what I
absolutely.
was doing there. And then she recommended the accountant for me, who then was like, you need to be an S Corp and then you need to be protected here and here and here with your liability insurance and your malpractice insurance. So those were the two big, like, investments I made, I would say,
Okay.
when it came to the legal formation of my practice. And then I was listening to different podcasts, this one, but they're like, "You need to invest in a good business coach, like, spend money to make money," sort of thing.
Sure.
So I opened my practice in May, and I wanna say in June, I ended up hiring a business coach, and
Okay.
she is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Shout out Dr. Sarah from Chiro Clarity. She owns Pinnacle Hill Chiropractic.
Okay.
Best investment I've made. She, like,
Yeah.
has helped me so much. Like, I was already on a good trajectory, and then she just leveled me up even more, and she
Awesome.
was my mentor prior to being my business coach because she's a women's health chiropractor, so
Yeah.
I've picked her brain many, many times.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, right? Is you have to invest in the places that make the most sense for you. And that may not be the
Mhm.
same for everybody, but identifying those places for you and being willing to actually invest that money, because that's also I think an extremely scary part of this whole thing. You start
Mm.
doing the bottom line dollars and cents and it gets frightening really fast.
Oh, yeah. I remember making that list prior to graduation because I was trying to figure out, like, how much money do I need? How much
Yeah.
money do I need to start out? And all of my mentors were like, "You do not need a lot. You need a table, a place to practice, malpractice insurance, obviously, and you need some way to take notes. Like, start with the bare minimum, and as you make money, that's how you invest in the practice." So I
Yeah.
started with very, very little, and then
Yeah.
as I made money, started making those
Started
investments.
growing. Now, what about kind of wearing both hats, right? You, the practitioner side, you said you knew who you were and who you wanted to be as a provider and a chiropractor. Did the business side of the house ever impact that or alter maybe that perspective of I want to do this as a doctor, but in order to be sustainable, maybe early on and successful as a business, there might have to be some adjustments to that idea. Did you ever run up against anything like that?
I will say the hardest part of owning your own practice, though, is asking people for money, and I did not think that
Sure.
would be an issue. Like, as a student, I was like, "Obviously, I have to get paid for the service," like, obviously. But
Yeah.
then you start treating patients, and I made the mistake of not doing a fee schedule right up front. I
Okay.
did I'm sure we'll get into this later, but I did just, like, a flat rate for, "This is how much first patient appointment cost, this is how much a follow-up is." And then once I hit, like, 6, 7 months into practice, 8 months into practice, I was like, "Oh, no, like, I have to switch this structure."
Let's pivot a little bit. Like you said, you changed some things, right? As you got into practice, 6, 7 months in, you realize that fee schedule idea is going to probably work better for you and ultimately in the long run is more sustainable. What other eye-opening experiences did you have early on that you may have known were coming but came faster or just were not prepared for and had to adjust on the fly to?
I switched my hours a lot because in my brain, I wanted to work kind of like that 9 to 5. And then I quickly realized as chiropractors, we're treating people who work. So I switched my hours and I found 6 hours at a time. I can jam pack my schedule seeing patients for 6 hours and I'm good. Then I can go do my clinical work. So that's kind of how I divided my day now, where Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I see patients 8 to 2, and then I stay and finish my business work, my notes, that sort of stuff. And
Sure.
then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I work 1 to 7. And those appointments have gone so fast. As soon as I started doing 1 to 7, I started booking up almost a month and a half out
Okay.
because people were like, ooh, I want that late night appointment.
Yeah.
And then I know those mornings, that's when I do my business paperwork too. That way I can be like, okay, this is my planning mode. Now I'm in doctor mode sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's how I've divided those two hats.
Anything from a business perspective, it sounds like you had a pretty good foundation between the lawyer and the accountant, right? With the formation and the tax
Mhm.
filing status and all those things. But were there any business ahas or gotchas that kind of came up in these first 8 months?
Trying to figure out insurances and the aspect of that fee schedule.
Okay.
So I was planning on taking insurance. And then I graduated from chiropractic school on March 30th. I applied for my license that same day because in New York State, you have to wait until that day. And I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, waiting for the month and a half, waiting, refreshing New York State's page. I finally get my license. Okay, now I can apply for my PLLC. Waiting for all those things. And I was like, you know what? I just want to start seeing patients. Like legally,
Okay.
I can start seeing patients. Let's do it. It'll be cash just to start out because obviously I'm not credentialed with any insurances yet. And I lucked out that I entered an area where they desperately needed a chiropractor. We
Okay.
had one other chiropractor in town. She was phenomenal and she had a 3-month waiting list for new patients. So that's how I knew coming in, like I would be okay opening up. And then when I was shadowing her the winter before I graduated, she's like, hey, just so you know, I'm leaving. So have fun. I was like, okay, awesome.
Oh,
So there was patients in our town going 6 months without a chiropractic appointment. So when I opened my doors, like I was lucky that first day I had 4 new patients. Like I had people waiting to come and see me, which once again, I know that is not the common trend. So I am beyond grateful for that. Yeah, so I hit the ground running and then my practice grew really, really fast, which is why I ended up hiring a business coach because I was like, I need to make sure that this is sustainable.
yeah.
And we hit a point where she was like, honestly, if you wanted to stay cash, like you could. This is a sustainable practice. And I was like, okay, that's terrifying to me. And then I was providing super bills to my patients and they were getting their money back and it seemed like they were happy and I was happy. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess this is what we're doing. But then July hit, I could finally apply with Medicare. And that has been a whole whirlwind of trying to figure out all the
Yep.
Medicare policies and procedures and creating manuals. And yeah,
Yeah.
trying to figure out on the fly, like, this is what I thought we were doing. And now all of a sudden we're down this path. And then,
So I think that takes us back to the earlier question, right? And I think from a lot of what I'm hearing is not really, but correct me if I'm misunderstanding. You had this idea going in, right? This is the provider I want to be, and cash was kind of a happy accident, I think, early on, right? It worked out really well. But as things have developed, be it business side or practice side, excuse me, have you found one or the other really affecting, like if you put the business hat on and say, this is how I want to run the business, but to be a successful doctor, I have to alter the business model, or vice versa. This is the type of provider I want to be, but business hat dictates I have to do things differently. Have you come up against any challenges like that?
I'm gonna say no. Like, I try not to let them cross. Like, obviously, like, from the business standpoint, like, I wanna make money and I wanna run a sustainable practice and do that, this, that, the other. But as a practitioner, like, my main priority is making sure that my patients are getting better. And I try
Sure.
really, really hard to keep those two separate and not let them cross. But that's when the asking for money thing starts to become an issue. Because even when I've
Yeah.
had to do, like, a reevaluation, I hate being like, oh, that's gonna be an extra fee. Which hiring an office manager, and by hiring, I mean having my mother do it,
Hey,
was the
that's
best
awesome.
part. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, "Mom, you get to collect the money. I'm going to be the doctor," sort of thing. So
Yeah, I know in talking to a lot of other providers, I've heard that as well. Having that separation of treatment versus office stuff, right?
Mhm.
Somebody else to handle the office stuff has always been extremely helpful. And I think it's both a perceptive thing, right? We as the doctor don't want to have the financial conversations because we want to keep those things separate. But somebody has to have them. So having that bulldog, which I'm assuming is probably how your mom is, which is awesome.
Yes.
I remember office managers I had, the ones that were like that were the best.
Yeah.
They took all that off your plate. So glad you found somebody like that as well. That's perfect.
Yeah. She's incredible. She's the best.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm biased because she's my mom, but
But hey, whoever it is, and I think I'm hearing a fairly common theme, I think from both of us through this, support systems, right? Having that right support system in place, your mom, your dad, the mentor doctor that all of a sudden was leaving practice right before you graduated, whoever it may be, those people are huge. And your business coach, all huge in our success along the way. So making sure we've got that support system in place, I think is big. And kind of to what I was saying before, that fear and uncertainty coming out, those people help alleviate a lot of that. At least on my end, would you kind of say the same? Having that felt like it almost took a weight off your shoulders.
yeah, there's definitely so much fear leading up to graduation. Even starting chiropractic school, I had so much
Yeah.
fear, and then definitely heading into graduation. And the day I opened, I remember being terrified. Like, you're all of a sudden, you go from having students around you and mentors and clinicians, and then it's you by yourself. And you could be on this island of just terrified. Like, what am I doing? Like, I have no one to ask. And then that's when it's important to have mentors, join your state association, all that sort of stuff, because then you have people to ask. And anytime I've had a
Yeah.
challenging case or I've needed that validation of, this is how the patient presented, this is what I did, like, would you have done something differently? They're like, no, you did exactly what I would have done. And then that validation's nice as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about that? If you are talking directly to somebody in school, first trimester, seventh try, whatever it may be, right now, today, that fear, that uncertainty is there, no matter how confident they may feel like they are. What would you want them to hear from somebody who's been through it, who's still going through the early stages of it, but you've gotten the doors open, you've had that success? What would you tell them?
Do not let fear paralyze you. I think that was the biggest thing. Like, fifth, sixth trimester, I was so scared. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm terrified. And my dad was like, Abby, you can't let fear stop you from chasing your dreams. Like, you need to take the leap. Like, you need to do it. And you're going to fail. Like, it's the truth. You're going to fail in some way or another, and that's okay. But how do you handle that failure? Like, you can't keep the fear of failure from chasing your dreams, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
push ahead, even if you're scared. It's okay. Find good mentors. Find that good support system. Shadow as much as you can. Learn what you like about practice. Learn what you don't, what you want to do, what you don't want to do.
Well, what about looking back at student Abigail Riutta? Your one, at least as you remember it, your one biggest fear about starting your practice, what was it?
That no one would come. That I would have spent all this time, money in school, stress, anxiety. I open my doors and no one shows up. And I think that's very common for a lot of students is, okay, I made this risk. I chose the risky route and all of a sudden there's no one here. And then you have to close your doors. That was definitely my biggest fear.
Okay. So, Dr. Abigail Riutta, what do you say to student Abigail Riutta about that fear?
You're good, girl. You work so hard. I've worked so hard. And like I said, like, I've had a lot of good support system, a lot of, I don't want to say luck because I've worked so hard,
Yeah,
but a lot of good things lining up at the right time, sort of thing.
sure.
And it's going to work out. You can't let fear paralyze you.
Yeah, and I think, there is a luck aspect, but I think you make your own luck, right?
Yes.
The groundwork you put in makes that luck for you in a lot of instances. So,
Yeah. Someone told me luck is when hard work meets opportunity.
yeah, absolutely, for sure. As we kind of wrap up, anything we haven't covered that, again, student Abigail Riutta should have heard from Dr. Abigail Riutta?
Put yourself out there. It is terrifying. Join as many associations, clubs, organizations as you can. The more you talk about the profession, the more you're comfortable talking about chiropractic care, who you are, the more confident you're going to be in yourself once you get into practice. I remember starting chiropractic school. Like I said, I really did not know how big this profession was.
Mhm.
And learning how to talk about what chiropractic care is, the importance of it has, as a student, definitely has translated as a doctor, where if people ask me questions about chiropractic care, I have no problem communicating that with you. Every now and then you might get a question from way out of left field where I'm like, you can give me a second, I gotta think on that. But most of the time, I'm confident in communicating what it is that we do and how I can help patients.
Thank you very much for the time today. Congratulations on the start into practice and the upward trajectory you're on. I loved hearing about it. And again, thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again, Dr. Riutta. As we wrap up today's conversation, I think one thing is clear. You don't have to have everything figured out to take that next step, but there's plenty of stuff that can get started today. Dr. Riutta's story is a reminder that confidence isn't something you graduate with. It's something that you build. One decision, one adjustment, and one day at a time. Every chiropractor you admired once stood exactly where you are now, uncertain, but hopeful. If you're a student listening today, trust this. You are more prepared than you think, and you're not walking this path alone. Keep leaning into the process. Keep learning from those who've done it before you, and keep believing in why those chiropractors chose the profession in the first place. We'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. If there's a fellow student or a colleague that you think may benefit from hearing this conversation, please share this episode with them. And be sure to watch the video version as well on the NCMIC YouTube page. If you'd ever like to contact me or the show, always email us at either askncmic@ncmic.com or me directly at jkec@ncmic.com. I'm Jon Keck, and thanks again for listening to Chiropractical.